Hey everyone, Josh here. So today we were working on the Touareg and we're doing a front wheel bearing. So a month or so ago I did one of the rear ones and it turned out terribly. So hopefully this one goes a little bit better. So my last video I was getting this prepared to do a northern work trip. I did that power or the extra ground strap and found some bad connections, stuff like that. When I was doing my once over, I found this wheel bearing was loose. So I was more concerned about not starting Touaregs that I couldn't get back to the hotel or back to the job site. Rather than doing this wheel bearing, so now it's time to fix this as well before it falls off. So just like the back one, I'm assuming this front one is torqued to really tight. I think it was 400 Newton meters, and of course it's a 12.32 mil. So I've got the center cap knocked out of my rim here. I'm gonna set this back on the ground and then get this loosened off before I take the tire off and start taking stuff apart here. Okay, so the plan of attack, we're gonna get this loosened off and make sure that the CV shaft will actually slide out of this hub here. We're gonna loosen the top ball joint here. I've had this apart when I had the engine out, so I'm pretty certain that's gonna come off nice. What I'm not so certain about will be this lower one here, but I think I can just put the weight of the jack on here and then a few taps, that should pop free, I would think. We're gonna get the brakes out of the way. The issue is this is a hard line back to a mount in behind here, which is held on with an Allen bolt, maybe two, and then it goes up to your flex line. So I'm gonna get that unbolted and then get this probably zip tied up here somewhere. All the wiring, there's a connector here for your brake pad sensor, and then this one down here for your ABS. Gonna get that out of there. And then same thing, this inner tie rod. I haven't had that one off yet, but same type of deal. You can use the jack to put a bit of pressure up on it and then just give it a tap with a hammer and it should pop free. The issue is live in Ontario, lots of salt, so it might be kind of rusted in, but I'm hoping this works okay. Okay, so we're gonna get the tie rod popped here first is the plan. This can get a little sketchy because you've got the whole weight of the car sitting on your jack stand. And the trick is you need a fair bit of pressure up, so then when you hit this, it'll actually pop up. So you can get to the point where you're actually lifting the car off the tie rod and then there's no weight on there. So you just want to be careful that it's not going to slip when it comes back down. The other way you can do is you can put a little nut on there, or put the nut on there and then jack on that. That way there's less likely chance to wreck the threads. And when that pops free, it doesn't go shooting way up. The issue with that is you have to be, or I'm a little concerned that you can't get it off afterwards. But most of the ball joints and tie rods and stuff, they have a nice little hex in the center, so you can normally get it to go, but that sometimes strips out and then you're kind of screwed. You almost have to tighten it back down and then run the nut back off, like get it tightened back on the taper. Okay, I got that popped off. I really wish I got that on camera of what not to do. So I had to put a bunch more pressure up here yet. And then finally when it did pop, this arm swung out and the jack almost tipped over. And I got clocked by the handle here. So it works really good. Put the nut on the bottom before you trying to do that. So that's out anyways. So now I'm gonna do this bottom ball joint. Okay, so I got this upper one popped now too. I'm not sure if I included it when I did my engine removal videos, but nice long pry bar. On the back side here, you can actually pry off of the spindle and off of the upper arm, and then I whack there a few times and then carefully hit this to knock that up. You don't want to hit this too hard or else you're going to swell that over and then it's not going to tighten down very well. So all the questionable connections are now cracked loose. So up now we're going to get the brakes out of here, we're going to get this out of here, the wiring harness, and I think we should be pretty well on our home stretch here, at least to getting it apart. Okay, so I've got this harness just hanging out. The Allen bolt from behind here is out, and then this top one was actually a 10 mil head, which I might have put that in separate, I'm not sure. I don't really remember. Anyway, so that's all the lines and stuff. So the last thing we'll be doing is get the brakes out of the way, and obviously undo these bolts and flop it down. The main thing you need to make sure is that this will slide in. It'll only go so far because of the CV. You can only slide in so far. So air hammers work really nice to get, so you can kind of control it and air hammer that in. This one wasn't actually too bad, so a few gentle taps with a hammer and it should slide in. If you're gonna use a hammer, make sure you don't hit the outside edge, or good luck trying to get the nut back on. So be very careful if you're just gonna use a hammer. One thing you can do is put the nut back on and put it just so it's back flush. And then that way, if you do mar it over a little bit, you can at least spin this out to kind of make new threads, because hopefully your new bearing has a new nut. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. Okay, so I got the rotor off. That took a bit of beating, and then the dust shield, just the 3 bolts here, and it comes off really nice. So it's a lot nicer to not worry about bending that or getting in the way. So now we're just down to the spindle here. So we got to go out to my parents' farm to use the press. But basically, we got to press the center spindle out. It's similar to the back setup here. Once the spindle's out of here, there'll be a snap ring, and then this bearing will get pressed this way. And then again, we're gonna have to make sure we mark, or we make sure we look at what side of the bearings where for the ABS sensor to pick up the speed, because that's all internal in the bearing. And you also need to make sure you don't break the tip off of your ABS sensor. So the other one, I ended up breaking it trying to get it out. So we're just gonna leave this in, and we're just gonna make sure that we don't press on that. So I'm gonna bring my big 3/4 inch socket set, because sockets work really nice for pressing tools, and it actually looks like it's gonna sit into a press pretty nicely compared to the back. So yeah, I'll get this loaded up and we'll get going. So we got that all loaded up. But I guess this is why it's rolling coal and it has no power. So I guess I gotta fix that before I get to go yet too. Good as new. So it always seems like the biggest issue is having this hub be able to fit through the base plate of the press. I had this issue with the back one as well, so I've got some spacers made up that are kind of sketchy. So I'm hoping it pops free, not too bad, and I'm hoping that's enough room, but I'm not sure yet. Okay, it popped out, but so did the snap ring, so that's not a good sign. So it looks like the inner bearing race didn't want to slide on the spindle here, and it just tried pressing the whole outside of the bearing out. So I'm hoping it didn't wreck this casting here, but we'll get on the bench and take a look. Okay, so looking at this, you can see where the snap ring was. But over here, I'm not sure if the camera's gonna pick that up very well. The snap ring groove here is filled right full of rust, so I don't think that snap ring was ever installed correctly. Whether this has been replaced once already or not, I'm not too sure. but that definitely shouldn't come apart like that. Okay, so the next step is if your snap ring was still in there like it should be, you'll have to take that out right now. Since I don't have that in there, I can clean this up, spray it with penetrating oil, and then we're gonna go back to the press, support it on this outside edge, or here again if you want, and press this outer race off. So again, with that tapered race how it is, you can press off of this race here and it should push the outside out as well. So again, you don't need the whole width or else you're going to damage your ABS sensor. Okay, so I took it off of here and I'm just pressing off strictly off the hub there. I'm maxing out the 12-ton press here, and there's a lot of cracking going on. So I'm going to take this out of here, I think, and weld a little bead on the inside of the race. So then it should kind of shrink up and press out of here easier. What's up, Harlow? So we're gonna weld this inside of the race here. So you would think putting heat and welding this would be counter. That would be the opposite of what you want to do. If you put heat, you'd think the race would expand, but with the weld here, once it cools down, it's going to contract and actually make this bearing come out a lot easier. So we're going to do a really hot bead, probably right down here, go all the way around. The main issue with that is all this grease is going to catch on fire, and it usually blows up and gets stuck to you, and then you got burning grease stuck to you. So it's not as fun with having this race in here yet. I could knock that out, but we're just getting in more work than we have to be. So of course the helmet, the auto tint battery was dead, so I was doing it with eyes closed, but as long as it's a bead all the way around. With these extra wide races, it would be ideal to run a bead up here and a bead down there all the way around, and run two nice beads, and then it collapses nicely. I've had them before where you don't even have to press them out. Just once they cool down, they just fall right out. But I think we throw this into the press now. It should, we'll let it cool down first and then throw it into the press, and it should just pop right out here now. Oh, no, Harlow, no. Okay, so we're gonna get the spindle set up here now. So normally you have to cut this off or use like a bearing puller or something. Harlow, look out. So, but there's not much of an edge to grab onto. So usually I like to use the die grinder and cut it this way, and then cut it on a pretty aggressive angle so you can get in here without messing up your hub. But what I've seen on TikTok is using a torch to heat this up, and then just gravity, it just falls off. So we'll see how that works. I'm gonna give it a shot here. I've got it set up in a drill. You can also use the torch to cut it, but you have to be very careful not to nick this. And you can also mess up the heat treatment of the spindle if it has any. But we're gonna try at least this, try this way first. So I think that's one of those one-shot type of deals. I think the shaft got too hot, so the shaft expanded as well as that race. So now I'm kind of stuck there. I gave it more heat and then it still didn't come off, so I think I'm just going to cut it. But at least it's a lot easier to cut here now because you're not tight to here. So I'll nick that and knock that off yet. So a nice little slit cut in it. And then just put a hammer punch in from there, and that just cracks all the way. You don't have to worry about cutting the shaft, so it works out nice that way. So we're gonna clean everything up here now and then get the new bearing ready to go. It's in the freezer right now. And yeah, we'll press it in. And we can also use this, now that it's cut, as our pressing tool when we go to put the spindle in. So this was the piece that was in the spindle like that. So that's the rubber side down so that the ABS sensor can pick up the balls in behind there for your speed. So that should fit in there somewhat. We'll go to the press and press that in. Okay, so I've got the bearing down flush here. It's got to go down a bit more to get that snap ring in yet, but you need to press off of this outside race. You can't push on that seal or else you're gonna wreck it. And if you press on here, it's gonna mark the races up and wreck the bearing as well. So a nice assortment of bearing races work nice. That's actually my rear bearing, wheel bearing, but the issue is that's if I use that as my pressing tool, it's gonna get stuck in there. So I'll just take the grinder to it and just kind of take just ever so slightly a little bit off this outside edge so I can get it back out after. Okay, so the leaning tower of bearings got it all pressed down in. So you can notice when I was pressing it in, it was about 5 tons or so going in, and then all of a sudden it started spiking up. So that's a good indicator that it's bottomed out. Oop. So yeah, that's all I did to the old bearing. Just enough so it slips out. And there, now we can get our snap ring put in. Make sure it's in right this time. Okay, that's in nicely. I gave it some taps down and in to make sure it's fully seated, because it was marked up a little bit here where the 2 openings were when that came flying out. But anyway, so next we can get the spindle put in. So the issue here is with the split bearing setup here, you've got an inner race, and then down in here you've got an inner race. So we're going to press this in, and we need to put our cut race like that for support, or else you're going to wreck this bearing. As you press that in, it's going to push hard on here and then push this next one out. So you need to be pressing against the other half, if that makes sense. So we're going to get this set up and get that pressed in now. So again, here with the leaning tower of bearings, as I'd said, you got the old inner race pressing on the new inner race, making sure you don't wreck your ABS sensor. And then we're pressing that in. So now should just go in nicely. Here it is, nice and easy, like that. That's snug here again, so now we're ready to go back together. Okay, so we're back here. So I don't think there's anything too spectacular about reassembly. I'm assuming the torque is going to be the same. I'm pretty sure it's the same bearing, to be honest, as the rear. I have to double check that, but pretty certain the torque spec will probably be the same as well. If not, I'll put a little blurb here. But yeah, as far as reassembly, I don't think there's going to be anything crazy. Just going to anti-seize the holes here for your calipers again. Do the splines here so that slides out nice and easy in the future. Same thing with these ones for the brake line holders. And then just kind of go back together. I don't know the torque spec for all these nuts, but you can just kind of use common sense, I think, and tighten it back together. Okay, so this is what happens if you're not careful. So this was, I think, from the ball joint, from the jack pushing up against it. Kind of dented it in. Now it won't tighten down, or it will, but it starts wrecking the threads. So I'm gonna run a M14 by 1.5 rethreader through it, and it'll no longer really be a lock nut, but a little dab of blue Loctite should work for now. All right, so we're all back together here now. I got it torqued on the ground here, so should all be good to go here. There's nothing too out of the blue to put it back together, so I didn't really include a whole lot for going back together. But yeah, so hopefully this video helped you, and thanks for watching.